Noah was a light. His presence changed a room, a true servant leader. His entire life marked by this and a clear calling early as a young man to serve the community. Who would choose this? What was he thinking? Why would you want to be a police officer? Someone who is rarely celebrated, officers know this, who is experiencing people who is never excited to celebrate you or give you good news or thank you for caring for them in the community that they have committed to serve in. Very few know this. Noah knew this. Noah knew this calling on his life would be a life of caring for people in distress and crisis. And yet, that is all he wanted to do, to be a servant. And as some of you may have figured that out by now, Noah took his lead from Jesus. I'd like to read to you from the book of John, found in the New Testament, chapter 14, verses 1 through 7. This is Jesus speaking. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and I prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. You know the way to the place that I'm going. One of Jesus' disciples, Thomas, said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And if you really know me, you will know my Father as well. So from now on, you do know him, and you have seen him. That, friends, is a message of hope. And some of you may be lacking hope in this moment. So on behalf of Noah, let me encourage you with this thought. God does not take lightly either our sin or our death. As followers of Jesus, and as a follower of Jesus, Noah was awed by the implications of 2 Corinthians 5:21. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. See, Jesus died to put away our sin from us. We are precious to him. And he was raised to show that God does not take our death lightly either. Psalms 116:15 says, his loved ones are very precious to him, and he does not lightly let them die. The awareness of our finiteness, of the brevity and frailty of our lives haunts us. Every generation since Adam has been anxious. We are, through fear of death, subject to lifelong bondage. Life is tenuous. It's unpredictable, fragile. It often takes turns that find us unprepared. To unbelievers, there seems this randomness about life wherein there is fortune or misfortune depending on nothing more than a flip of the coin or the roll of dice. There are those who have good runs of chance, but at some point, one's luck must run out. Even believers, those whose faith is strong, look askant at the events of life. They're aware of God's presence and power. They know his creative activity, but for them, the crucial question is, does God care about what happens to us? Does he forget our personal needs, our fears, our wants, our need for his presence? The difficulty that we have in understanding God's ways can be stated no more forthrightly than from a young teenager I once spoke with who reasoned, I don't think God is fair. He lets us die, but he didn't die himself. It's because this young man's two main premises were misguided that he came to the wrong conclusion about God's fairness. God does not desire our death, neither does he sit by idly while we die. Noah knew well the truth of that. A verse Noah would share with all of us comes from Joshua 1:9. It says, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Perhaps the most remarkable yet overlooked feature of Jesus' vocabulary was the casual way in which he described death, his as well as others. When he told the 12 disciples of Lazarus' death, he spoke in such casual terms that they misunderstood him entirely. Understandably so. He said, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to go there and wake him up." Now, why wake a napping friend, especially one who is recovering from an illness? They probably all wondered. Well, Jesus was referring to Lazarus' death, but his words left them with the impression that Lazarus was literally asleep. The same happened with a little girl who had died, and upon hearing this, he told a crowd, "She's not dead, she has just fallen asleep." Later, when preparing his disciples for his own imminent death, he spoke so casually of it as they thought he was literally leaving the city, just leaving the city for a moment. In that same conversation, he said, "My Father's house, it has many rooms. I'm going to go there and prepare a place for you. And when I prepare a place for you, I'll come back and take you with me." No wonder they were confused. Jesus had literally reduced death to the complexity of running next door for a cup of sugar. His followers did the same. Paul, writing to believers in Thessalonica, responding to questions about loved ones who were no longer with us, saying, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, so that you will not grieve as do the rest who have no hope." Then, referencing those who had seen Jesus after his resurrection, Paul wrote, "Then he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time, most of whom were still alive, though some had fallen asleep." Why refer to death as sleep? It's because people who fall asleep wake up. On July 31st, 2022, Noah went to sleep. That's what Jesus taught. Paul affirmed. But we don't just take comfort in this depiction merely because Jesus said it and Paul affirmed it. We believe it because hours after Jesus predicted his own departure, he was arrested, crucified, and buried, and then, as he promised, he woke up. His followers, they took to the streets with the message that the death had met its match. The rabbi from Nazareth was now the resurrection and life all rolled into one. Then Paul, taking his cue from Jesus, left us with one more insight. To be absent from the body is to be home with the Lord. Noah Shahnavaz woke up in his new home with the Lord. But he will be missed more than words can express.